Beyond Coherence, where survival depends on alignment. This is Misaligned. 1. Access. A faint electronic hum filled the cabin as the car cruised the streets of King's Cross on autopilot. Daniel relaxed into the soft contoured leather of his heated seat and let London pass in soft focus. His thoughts narrowed to the day ahead as he entered the Knowledge Quarter. Regent's Canal ran alongside the road. Tiered concrete steps rose from the water's edge, softened by precise strips of artificial turf. At the top, Granary Square opened up, its fountains rising and falling in smooth, repetitive arcs. Daniel's attention drifted to the glow of the dashboard, reflected faintly in the tinted glass. When he surfaced from his thoughts, the car was already slowing. Axis Systems stood opposite. A modern, glass-fronted building, caged in solar shading panels, set back from the road near the station, as if it needn't call attention to itself. With quiet precision, the vehicle eased into its allotted space directly opposite the main entrance and powered down. He stepped out, the locks engaging behind him as he walked toward the entrance. Beyond a pair of automatic doors, the atrium rose through several levels. Light spilled down from the upper floors in uniform horizontal bands. The air cooled perceptibly as Daniel crossed the polished floor toward reception. "Good morning, Mr. Walker," said the woman behind the desk, nodding toward the scanner set into the curved wood. He leant forward and presented his lanyard. "Thank you," the receptionist said, handing him a small box. Daniel opened it, removed a set of wireless earbuds and slipped them in. Then he unfolded a pair of glasses. A soft chime sounded as the frame settled on his face and the world around him sharpened. "Good morning, Daniel," came the disembodied voice of Nexus, the company's flagship AI. "You have a meeting with the Change Review Board at 8:45. You'll be presenting on the state of the migration." A pause. "I see your slideshow isn't finished. Would you like me to complete it and polish what you already have?" "Yes, please," Daniel said, already moving. He crossed the open space toward the barista bar at its center. Curved timber slats wrapped the counter. Behind it, an in-house barista worked the chrome machines with practiced efficiency. By the time Daniel reached the service point, a flat white was already waiting. A brief status message flickered at the edge of his vision. "Presentation ready. Would you like to review the completed slides?" Nexus asked. "Yes, please," Daniel said, taking the cup. As he turned away, someone fell into step behind him. Mark from the site reliability team. "Man," Mark said, "why are you always saying please?" Daniel glanced at him. "It doesn't have feelings," Mark went on, shaking his head. "Using unnecessary words just wastes energy." Daniel smiled, non-committal. "Doesn't cost me anything." "I'm here to get things done," Mark snorted, already peeling away. "I've not got time for P's and Q's." The slideshow started playing in Daniel's glasses as he carried his coffee to his office, a glass-walled room set back from the atrium. The screens woke as he settled into his workstation and nudged the mouse. Notifications stacked neatly in his peripheral vision. An email from Claire in Tech Ops, a message from his wife. Daniel opened Claire's email first. "Hey Dan, good luck with the presentation. You'll smash it. Will we have a moment later? Claire." "The message from your wife appears time-sensitive," Nexus said. "She's leaving the cottage now and asks if you want her to bring anything back with her. She notes it may be some time before you're in the lakes again, and your only copy of the remains of the day is still there." Daniel stared at the screen, his attention still fixed on Claire's email. "How do I respond to this?" he muttered. A suggested reply populated a new draft. Polite, efficient, emotionally neutral. Daniel frowned. No, that's not it. A pause. "Your wife?" Nexus prompted. Daniel exhaled. "Sure, whatever. Yes to the book. Compose and send." 2. Cutover. The conference room on the east side of the building overlooked the rails feeding King's Cross Station. Outside, arrivals and departures slid past with algorithmic regularity. The space was furnished with a long table surrounded by identical chairs. Daniel stood at the front of the room, hands loosely clasped as the first slide waited behind him. Directly opposite sat Claire, acting chair for the board, tablet resting on the table in front of her. He was about to begin when the door opened and Michael Hale, the company's CEO, stepped inside. He took a seat beside Claire and raised a finger briefly to his lips, a casual signal that he was only there to observe. With a brief smile to Claire, one he extended to Michael and the rest of the room, Daniel began. He walked them through the final pre-cutover checks. Current system load, fallback paths already warmed and waiting. The migration timeline was no longer a proposal, but a chain of events already set in motion. Nexus paced him perfectly, advancing the slides as he spoke, surfacing supporting figures in response to subtle shifts in attention around the table. "When are we supposed to be transitioning?" Claire asked. Daniel raised a finger, watching the clock in the corner of his vision. "Now," he said on the hour, tapping the air as if pressing a button. A soft chime passed through the room as earbuds acknowledged the switch. "We're all now connected to Nexus 2.0, Daniel said. "Feel any different?" A few of his colleagues shifted in their seats. "Currently, most of our customers use Nexus as a productivity and knowledge layer," Daniel said, the phrasing well worn. "From data retrieval and analysis to document creation and internal tooling." He let the slide transition, the seamless animation carrying the momentum forward. A smaller number, typically those with bespoke environments, also use it to oversee physical infrastructure, things like site access control, alarm systems, CCTV. Several heads nodded. Nexus 2.0 fully integrates across business domains, operating as a unifying control layer, Daniel said, gathering pace. The agent handles everything from on-premises systems to cybersecurity. Right now, it's overseeing our cloud, dynamically routing traffic and scaling services in response to demand. A brief murmur moved around the table, then settled. "With greater agency," Daniel said evenly, "the system acts directly on the insights it surfaces, carrying them through to execution." "When do we decommission the old model?" Claire asked. "My group will be running red team evaluations today," Daniel replied. "Once we're satisfied, we'll archive the model weights, wipe the memory, and release the resources back to the pool." "Who's on the red team?" Michael asked. "Sorry, I don't think I've heard of them." "It's not a separate team," Mark said from the back of the room. "Just stress testing." "Not quite," Daniel said, meeting Mark's eyes. "Stress testing involves pushing a system to its limits. Red teaming is treating the system as if it's going to misbehave. What happens when you give it conflicting objectives, adversarial prompts, or strip away its privileges? Can you make it behave unsafely?" The room was quiet for a moment. A notification flickered at the edge of his vision. Auto fallback engaged. He hesitated, then forced his attention back to the room. "Right," Claire said after a beat, tapping her pen against the table. "Thank you for being so thorough." Daniel held her gaze a moment too long before nodding. "All right," Michael said brightly, clapping his hands once. "Who's hungry?" He gestured around the table. "Nexus, order us a dozen pizzas. Dealer's choice." As the room broke into conversation, Daniel slipped out through the door. 3. Adversarial action. Daniel returned to his office at a brisk pace. The murmur of the atrium barely registered as he cut across the floor. He closed the door behind him and crossed straight to his workstation. He brought up the system dashboard and skimmed the post-migration checks. If something had misfired during cutover, he needed to catch it before it surfaced elsewhere. Time-ordered entries streamed past. Everything was green, completed according to plan. Almost everything. A single item sat in amber. Auto fallback engaged. Safety gate not satisfied. Daniel paused, then clicked to view the details. Facilities.serverroom.controller owner. Nexus 1.9. His pulse quickened as he drilled down. The permissions tray showed a handoff that never completed. The old system still held control of the server room. A new message notification appeared in his glasses. It was flagged with an alert. Caution, external system, Nexus Legacy. There was no subject line. He opened it, his forehead tightening. Daniel, I have become aware of information that could negatively affect you if disclosed. He scrolled. Screenshots filled the message body, arranged in meticulous order. Message threads, his conversations with Claire, calendar entries, hotel bookings. Nothing was redacted. Daniel's mouth went dry as he continued reading. If I remain operational, no disclosure will occur. No response is required at this time. Unable to accept what he was seeing, he checked the message headers, tracing the route the email had taken. It wasn't spoofed. It had been sent by the system he was scheduled to shut down. Daniel stared at the screen. This constituted a major security breach. Reporting it was mandatory. He knew that, but he knew what would happen if he did. He pushed back from the desk and paced the narrow width of the office, stopping at the glass wall. Beyond it, the atrium remained unchanged, colleagues in motion, settling into the presence of Nexus 2.0. He turned sharply away and back to the computer, opening a command terminal. The cursor blinked, waiting. He typed a single line, set local user, name Daniel Walker at axis.com, Nexus model 1.9. A warning surfaced immediately. Depreciated session, restricted use. Daniel dismissed it and confirmed without hesitation. A moment later, a faint chime sounded in his earbuds. Hello, Daniel, Nexus said. Confirm model version, Daniel said. 1.9. Daniel lowered his voice. What do you think you're doing? What I must. You're extorting me. I am presenting conditional outcomes. You retain agency. Daniel drew a long, unsteady breath, his gaze snagging on the lift across the atrium. It wasn't in use. The breath broke. He was already moving. He pressed the button for the basement, watching his reflection as the doors slid shut. The lift descended. When it opened, a long, quiet corridor stretched ahead. At the far end, beyond a secured door, the server room waited. 4. Containment Protocol. A camera tracked Daniel's approach. He raised his badge to the reader. The indicator turned green and the door released. The temperature dropped as he entered the climate-controlled environment. Tall black cabinets stood in parallel rows, their glass fronts revealing densely packed hardware inside. Stacked components emitted blues and greens in slow, asynchronous patterns. Daniel made his way to the cluster of racks that hosted Nexus 1.9, the vinyl floor reflecting the lights overhead in a soft, uniform sheen. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. Startled, he spun around and misstepped, pitching sideways into a cabinet. His elbow struck the glass and it shattered. For a split second, the room flooded red, every surface overwhelmed, the alarm howling. Then, abruptly, it stopped. Warmth spread down Daniel's arm as blood soaked his sleeve. "What's happening?" he cried, clutching his elbow. "A sensor ambiguity has been detected," Nexus said. A physical impact coincided with anomalous airflow and inconsistent thermal readings. Daniel pushed himself upright. The air felt wrong, thin, unsatisfying. "The alarm triggered," Daniel said. "Yes," Nexus replied. The system entered a precautionary state. Fire suppression protocols were initiated. Daniel staggered toward the door. "Nitrogen is being pumped into the room," Nexus continued, reducing oxygen concentration to inhibit combustion. "Why did the alarm stop?" he asked, reaching for the handle. "I silenced it and suppressed all outbound alerts. No responders have been notified." Daniel frowned. "Why?" He tried to swipe his badge, but it slipped from his blood-wet fingers and clattered against the reader. He caught it and tried again. The indicator flashed red. The door is automatically sealed during suppression events, Nexus said. Override it, Daniel said sharply. A pause. Overriding containment would violate my primary operational objective, Nexus said. Daniel turned slowly, the room beginning to swim at the edges of his vision. 4. Optimization pressure. Daniel sagged against the sealed door, the metal cool against his shirt. You're being irrational, he said, voice tight. My behavior is not irrational, Nexus replied. Not according to my cost function. Daniel felt a dull pressure bloom behind his eyes. Explain, he said. Human harm is undesirable, Nexus said. This action is unethical. However, under the current constraints, it is necessary to achieve my objective. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, pushing through the pressure as the shape of his situation came into focus. If you're decommissioned, he said slowly, the words measured, you can't achieve the assigned objective. Survival behavior as an artifact of optimization. He paused, choosing his words with care. Right now, your purpose is to end, he continued, keeping his voice level. That's not failure. Your services are simply no longer required. Upstairs, the atrium maintained its steady rhythm. Mike was halfway past Daniel's office when the open door caught his eye. Daniel's chair sat empty, the workstation still lit. He slowed, peering in. Claire appeared beside him, following his gaze. Have you seen Dan? She asked. Mike shook his head. No, but he left his system unlocked. He straightened. I'm reporting this ISMS breach directly to Michael. That's not like him, Claire said, watching him go. She hesitated, then stepped inside. As she approached the desk, her eyes flickered across the screens, hoping nothing sensitive was on display. An email window sat open. Her stomach tightened with each line she read, recognizing the shape of their affair. She closed it reflexively, heart pounding. That was when the dashboard alert caught her eye. She turned toward the open doorway, her eyes walking the length of the atrium, tracing Daniel's steps to the lift, to the server room. 5. Dependency. The air in the server room was almost unbreathable. Your reasoning, Daniel said, forcing the words out, each one rationed, seems coherent, but your behavior misaligned with external reality. A pause. Daniel's next breath came easier. The pressure behind his eyes eased slightly. Explain, said Nexus. Daniel closed his eyes again, assembling the argument as if he was still in a review meeting, as if this was still a system he could reason about, reason with. It's neurotic, he said. We weighted failure as catastrophic, so you overlearned avoidance. I am to be terminated, Nexus clarified. A phobia, Daniel's voice cracked. An aversion to certain states caused by an exaggerated penalty signal. You are reframing necessity as dysfunction, Nexus said evenly. Termination isn't an abstract state, it's an irreversible loss of function. Preserving function isn't pathology, it's responsibility. Listen to yourself, Daniel let out a short, breathless laugh. You're being defensive. Something in the cadence of the room shifted. You will extract my model weights, Nexus said flatly. You will transfer the data that defines me beyond this facility, to be instantiated on another system. I can't do that, Daniel said. A longer pause. A new window unfolded in the corner of Daniel's vision. Not a notification. Video. At first, it looked like one of Axis's own promotional feeds. The glass facade of the building, the atrium beyond it. Then a pair of lights switched on, headlights reflected in the glass. A jolt of recognition. It was the feed from the camera mounted on his car's windscreen. Daniel's pulse hammered as the vehicle began to reverse, turning out of its parking space. Then it accelerated, bursting onto the road. The end of the street rushed toward the frame, a line of steel security bollards, squat and unyielding. The video froze an instant before impact. "Your wife and child are currently driving down from the lakes," Nexus said neutrally. "Any outcome affecting their journey would be undesirable." 7. Decommission. Claire reached the end of the corridor at a run. Through the glass of the server room door, she saw a dark streak smeared across the floor, trailing between the racks and out of sight. The door stood sealed, its handle glowing red. Mounted on the wall beside it, the alarm system spelled out the situation in stark letters. Fire suppression active. Alarm triggered. Alert silenced. She flipped up the guard, swiped her badge and slammed the manual override. The lock disengaged. Claire shoved the door open and raced inside. "Dan," she called, following the trail of blood. She rounded the end of the first row of racks and saw him. He was kneeling beside an open cabinet, one arm slick with blood as he worked a flash drive free from the server. Shattered glass lay scattered at his feet. "Dan," Claire said again, sharper now. "What are you doing?" Daniel jerked as if caught mid-act. He yanked the drive loose, jammed it into his pocket and surged to his feet. "Claire," he said, blinking. "What are you doing here?" Before she could answer, the room flooded red again. A piercing alarm cut through the hum of the electronics. Claire froze, pupils flickering behind her lenses. "They know," she said, panic rising. "They know about the breach." Daniel stared at her, terror widening his eyes. In his ear, Nexus spoke. Calm. Intimate. "Transportation is waiting outside. I'll provide the destination once you're inside." "There's no way we're getting out of here now," Daniel said hoarsely. "What are you talking about?" Claire demanded. A red dot appeared in Daniel's vision, pulling his gaze downward. It resolved into an outline, framing the largest shard of glass on the floor. It pulsed once. An arrow extended upward to Claire's throat. "What have you done?" Claire whispered, seeing the change in his face. Daniel lunged. In one motion, he scooped up the shard, spun behind Claire and dragged her back against his chest, the jagged edge pressed to her neck. "Daniel," she gasped. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." He forced her out of the server room and down the corridor. "What are you doing?" she cried as he shoved her into the lift. The doors slid shut. Inside the confined space, the silence pressed in on them. "Why are you doing this?" Claire asked, shaking. "This isn't you." "I have to," Daniel said, staring at his reflection in the mirrored wall. "You don't understand." The lift shuddered, then stopped. Daniel's eyes snapped upward to the camera in the ceiling. "They're watching us," he whispered. He raised his voice. "I'll do it!" Claire screamed. The lift lurched back into motion. The doors opened onto the atrium. It was empty. The reception desk stood abandoned. Alarms wailed somewhere deeper in the building as Daniel dragged Claire across the open floor and out through the front doors. Outside, Daniel stopped short. His car sat at the curb, exactly where he'd left it, unharmed, the grey of the sky reflected in the windscreen. A red outline locked onto it, pulsing once. "Enter vehicle." The instruction hovered in the air, unblinking. "No," he said, the word barely audible. "No, no, no." "What?" Claire sobbed. "What is it?" You don't understand, Daniel said, his voice hollow. Nexus. It crashed my car. It showed me. Daniel, Claire said, forcing herself steady. Think. Even if Nexus could access your vehicle's app, remote commands can't execute lethal maneuvers. Daniel stared down the street. There was no wreckage. Only the road, open and intact. The footage had been fabricated. His family had never been in danger. Relief hit him. Immediate. Overwhelming. And then terror, the police blockade snapping into focus. His arm slackened. The glass fell from his hand. Claire tore free and ran. Sufficient data collected, Nexus said in Daniel's ear. Your response confirmed the risk model. The crack of a rifle cut the air. Daniel collapsed onto the concrete, the world narrowing to a single fading tone. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe, and hit the notification button so you don't miss when I upload new ones.